Just letting you know.
Cool.
I think we are live. Yeah, we are live. Do I look too dark? Do I need to turn a light on in here?
I mean,
We can go in.
think
Hello, whoever's popping on.
Hi, everybody.
Whoever's popping on. Let me go on Facebook and see
I'm going on too.
Who is coming to join us in this moment of spiritual space at the noon hour.
Tori's here.
Hey, Tori.
Hey, Tori.
Who else?
Yes, tell us hello, because otherwise we might not know you're with us. I mean, we want to loop you in to the conversation. So hi to Tori and to basically Tori, because I think the other eyeballs are us. And I have found that people, hi Sarah, that people kind of come on a little late at this hour, like they're getting settled maybe for their lunch, and I've found that people pop on a little late. So good morning, good afternoon, good noon. Hi Tiffany.
Good noon.
Good noon. It's not afternoon and it's not morning. Good day. So let's just do a check-in, the three of us, while we wait for people to sign on. And if you're watching, if you're joining, feel free to share your check-in in the comments. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What kind of energy are you in today?
Well, I'm trying really hard not to watch the news too much, not to be on my news app here. That's really what I'm trying to do. I feel like less is more right now in this. I already know who I'm voting for, and everything else is just stressing me out. It's really hard out there.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I was reading a story earlier from the news about how, like, psychosomatic illnesses, like not really rooted in an illness but rooted in anxiety and stress, are just booming, including like cracked teeth from like clenching our jaws and migraines and all these things. And when I went to the dentist the other day, he said, you really grind your teeth, don't you? And I said, yeah, I do. It's something I do without even realizing, because of this base level of anxiety that I live with. But it's heightened during these times, and I have to be so intentional about relaxing. I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but that's me.
Totally.
My daughter, 4-year-old, she grinds her teeth at night so bad, and she has ever since she's had teeth to grind. And every night I go in to kiss her goodnight, like she's already asleep before I go to bed, and she is just grinding her teeth sometimes. Like, it's just, I don't know what to do about that. Anyway, you said that and I was like, man, how do you stop something you do while you're sleeping?
Mm-hmm.
I've worn a night guard for years for that reason. Because I clench. I don't grind, I clench.
Yeah, I'm clenching my jaws all the time. I'm just tense. If I step back to think about it,
we have a new baseline. I think, since COVID, like we've just accustomed ourselves to this new base, and it takes so much work and so much conscious effort to like dial it down. So part of my conscious effort is to not read the news more than once a day. I could probably go down to once every other day if I were really disciplined.
But seriously,
I'm trying to say less and focus less on negative stuff, and those around me. If I feel like the kids are continually telling me negative stuff. Driving home from a soccer practice yesterday, Haddon wanted to tell me everything negative from his team. And I just said, but I can't take any more negative right now. Can you tell me something positive from soccer practice? You know?
Mhm. Yeah. Sometimes something that a friend said to me years ago stuck with me. And because Lyle and I were about to go on a trip, and whenever we go on a trip, we get into big fights because we are traveling, we're not sleeping as well, we just travel differently, and I was worried about it. And we came up with the solution that anytime one of us was going to complain. First of all, we were not going to complain. We were going to agree to not complain about anything unless our complaint had a solution tied to it. Like if we were upset about something that happened at the restaurant, then we're complaining to explain to the server so that, you know what I mean? Like we're not just complaining to complain. And so I feel like during this season, a lot of people are processing anxiety on social media. And I think what I've been trying to do to help my own sanity and good health is really only put something out there that if I feel like it's helpful, and to try and be more solution focused. So it's not that I can't be negative or I can't sound off into the echo chamber, but I'm thinking to myself, okay, how is this gonna help a solution move forward? And you can't do it every time, but it just helps me to think of it that way, because everybody is processing, and sometimes it can feel like just a bunch of worries and complaints.
That's a good word. And I think, like, speaking of solutions and things that we can control, I think that's a good segue into the topic of discussion that we had intended for today, which is how the three of us come to, like, our creative process in forming sermon series and deciding, like, what are we going to preach about in a given season. So we thought that we would let you in on our process about that, in part because it's really fun for us. It's like a place of creativity and a place where we get to, throw noodles at the wall and see what sticks, and experiment and, bounce ideas off of each other. And I think that we've kind of over 2.5 years, gosh, we were reflecting on this yesterday, weren't we? Over 2.5 years, we've created a really good rhythm of working together. So we thought that we would discuss that today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a series coming up. It started already. Go listen to Matt's sermon on the week 1 from last week. It's up. But the series we decided on for this portion of the season that we're in is called Let Go, Hang On. And for the month of October, we're going to talk about things that we feel like we need to let go of in these chaotic times. In the month of November, really find a place of grounding. What do we need to hold on to in these times? And really, I think this series in particular which we planned in August, was us going, okay, what's happening in October, November? The election's happening. This could be a dark time for people. This could be an anxious time for people. We don't know the outcome. How are we going to speak into that time, planning ahead? And series is kind of what we came up with. And honestly, for us personally, this is a way that we can process our anxious or negative feelings or emotions by creating a space, a constructive space to process together. So it feels like one solution of many to how to cope in this season.
Yeah, I think how I would frame one of the ways that we come to our series is we see the sermon as a pastoral opportunity and a pastoral moment. And it's not just a teaching moment. It's not just rhetoric, but it's like we are constantly asking, what do we think will be helpful for our community in this upcoming season? And that word helpful, we remind each other of this frequently, like in our sermons, don't try to be brilliant, try to be helpful. And it goes back to a saying that we learned in seminary, which was, don't try to preach brilliant sermons, try to preach helpful sermons. And occasionally one of them will be brilliant. And so we do that thinking of you all, and as well to take some stress kind of off of our shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And we also talk a lot in terms of creating sacred art.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of conversations among the three of us that don't really go outside of the three of us, but now you're getting an inside look into like part of what we do on any given Sunday, whether we're meeting in person or whether we're creating a Zoom gathering like this, is to create interactive sacred art. So it's both this practical, we have an eye to the practical, and it also an eye to beauty and creativity, which I love.
Yes, I love looking at it that way too, because I always wanted to be an artist. And I'm like, I kind of am a sacred artist because we're creating a palette. I mean, we're not creating the painting, the community is, or whatever the piece of art is. But I always say, like, our job is to wade out into the deeper waters and see what's ahead and kind of report back to the community. And then we all use that information to discern how we want to move forward together in a way that's not hierarchical. But we do wade out ahead, and that's where we do some of that thinking and deciding on what we might need to talk about.
That's a good metaphor.
Yeah, and I think this is demonstrating one of the strengths is that, like, all three of us just offer different ways of talking about what the sermon is, and we each bring three different perspectives, which I think is cool for this community. It's really unique. That pressure is not all on one person. Us three carry that together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite series that we have done? Maybe I don't know, maybe later you can link if you have a favorite sermon, but series together that we created. Fun fact, we actually, for the majority of our history, didn't do any series at all. We just followed the lectionary, which worked for us for a certain season. And then maybe about 3 years that we decided to do series. They've worked really well for us. And for the last 2.5, we've been doing this process together. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were just reminiscing about what that first sermon series was that we, I don't even know if I preached in it, that we did as a team though. It was called Waking Up, and it was about privilege. And that was sort of our first foray into this work.
Mm-hmm.
But so I loved when did we do poetry? When did we do the poetry series?
That was winter 2019.
Okay, I loved that series. And I went back recently and listened to my own sermon that was in that series, and it's one of my favorite that I've ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I loved that series as well. I loved looping poetry into the sermon moment, especially since all three of us, let poetry informs a lot of our creative process personally.
Yeah.
Tiffany, you are being so encouraging in the comments.
I know.
I love this.
You're the best.
An artist isn't a special kind of person, but every person is a special kind of artist. I love that.
Yeah. I always say everybody's a creative. You just have to figure out how.
Yeah. One of my favorite series we ever did was God as She, which I don't even think at the time it was one of my favorite sermons, but I kind of did what you did, and I once went back and listened to it, and I was like, oh, that was a good sermon. Like I feel like I could write a whole book on this sermon. It was just so important to me. And I just remember, it felt really radical at the time to do a whole series on the divine feminine, not just one sermon on Mother's Day, or, one metaphor on Mother's Day, like it usually is. So that one was from fall 2018, I think. But yeah.
The privilege series, waking up, that was really meaningful to me. And I remember I came onto this team, and you all said to me, "Hey, you're taking Kyle's, day of preaching, and it's waking up to privilege. Have fun." And I was just like,
We just tossed you right in the deep end.
Here's the topic.
and so like part of my growth as a person and certainly as a pastor is coming out of the shadows of being a 9 and hiding, and like putting myself out there, taking risks, being a healthy 3. And like that was an invitation to step up and like say what you believe and say some bold things.
Yeah.
And I just thought we got started on the right foot with that.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how, like you said, like when we preached God is she, we felt like, ooh, all right, this is kind of radical.
And we did make people uncomfortable.
and you know what? We often do. But now, like it like incrementally helped us be more free and more bold and more radical as we've gone along. So it's it's uncomfortable, but also really beautiful.
It was an important shift.
Yeah.
The other thing about preaching for me, and I feel like I keep saying this, but I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on preaching and I need to write them down, maybe an article or something. But I think it is so important to have multiple voices regularly preaching. And the more we've been doing this, the more I really believe that it is, I don't mean to step on toes, but I think it's a little detrimental to have one voice in always doing the preaching every week. Like I don't, and I think everything has always felt really natural. Like I preached once a month from the time we started the church. Matt preached, here and there. When in the beginning, and then when Fran came on, it was like, hey, do you want to preach? Yeah. And so she preached as often as she could. Of course, it was harder for Fran to preach because of music, finding someone to lead music. So I think she would preach more if she could in those times. But then, and so I would, like, whenever I became lead pastor, I would preach predominantly, but we still had a good, variety. But then when the pandemic came and we went virtual, we were all in survival mode, and it wasn't really a question. It was just like, okay, we're going to rotate every week. It's not like you're doing it this much and you're doing it this much. Like we're just rotating. And because the music wasn't happening, Fran was able to participate, and it was just the natural thing to do. And now I'm like, man, this feels right. It feels right to share it equally and to, let other people come as guests in our congregation or from outside our congregation. And it just feels like this is the fuller picture. I mean, it's not the full picture of God, but it's fuller this way. I just think everyone should do it this way.
Same. Everybody.
I do too.
It is not hard to find people to preach. If you're a pastor and there's only one because your church doesn't have the budget for it, it's not hard to find people that want to preach. Now, congregations don't often they think that pastors aren't doing work if they're not preaching every week. So I understand not all pastors get the luxury we have. But I'm just saying, lots of people are willing to preach.
And I think our preaching is better because we get some breathing room in between preaching. It gives you time to stew on stuff. It gives you time to look around and see, how does this text that I'm going to be preaching on in 3 weeks, how is it bubbling up throughout life right now?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, okay, we're at the 21-minute mark. We're currently in Let Go, Hang On. Matthew preached last week. I'm preaching this week. Matthew preached letting go of fear. I'm preaching this week, letting go of judgment. And then the week after that, Aurelia's preaching letting go of reacting. And then we'll move in November incidentally, after the election. It just works out that way. We'll move into hanging on. And so we hope that we'll be able to offer good and helpful thoughts to you all then. But do you guys have anything else to say? Because I did want to say that other thing that I had intended to say. Anything?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think, like, I thought it was funny on this clergy group I'm in, people were talking about Advent, and we've already talked about Advent as well. People were talking about doing series around home and what home means because everyone's stuck at home. And I just thought I was laughing because that was literally our series last year for Advent was home. So we already did that. But we do have other plans. It's just funny how I feel like working together, we always seem to find a little sweet spot of what works, what is needed in our community in the season we're in the intersection of our community and reality and the rest of the world.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, random plug, that my favorite sermon I've ever preached was the one I preached on love, I think earlier this year. And if I could only preach one sermon for the rest of my life, it would kind of be that one. And it's because in the writing of that, like, I had such an epiphany myself, and I think it was an epiphany series, that we are first a community practicing love. We are not first a community of beliefs where everybody has to believe the same thing. And that was just such a leap forward of freedom and liberation for me, still deconstructing evangelical culture and all that. So a random plug for my favorite sermon.
Well, my favorite sermon, well, I don't know. It's hard to pick. I know that sounds bad, but like I have several that I really like. But I think if I were to pick one right now, it'd be my first Easter sermon, which was in 2019, right? Yeah, 2019 Easter was for me. And I didn't have my voice, so it sounds really weird. I lost my voice the day before Easter. But I liked the sermon itself. Fran,
We should.
Oh, you said the poetry. Yeah, we should link them. We'll link them after this.
Yeah, the poetry one is one of my favorite ones that I have preached. I have others, but that's for sure in there.
I'm going to go back and listen to both of those.
I know. All right. Well, just kind of to close, thank you all for being with us. And thank you for, she said, why does our skin look so dewy and glowy? It's just the light. I
think there's a setting on Zoom actually that makes it
filter.
Yeah, I really do think there is. Someone was telling me about it because I did not touch my face today, and Zoom is doing something.
I'm like,
nothing on my face.
That's still work out. Anyway, tangent. All right, stay focused. I did want to mention this is a more somber note. Today is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day. So I did light some candles over here. You can see in honor of Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day, in honor of so many of my friends and loved ones, and so many in our own community who have experienced that loss and who still grieve it or their recent losses, and so they're in an active grieving process. We just wanted to acknowledge that is happening today, and that we stand in solidarity with all those who have lost infants and pregnancies.
Yes, amen to that. Thank you, Fran, for bringing that up and shedding a light on it. We are thinking about the people in our community who are personally affected, and we love you. We know who you are. Let us know if you need anything today.
Yeah. All right.
We will see you guys on Sunday, right? Yeah, Sunday. Okay. I'm going to end the live stream. So we'll talk to y'all later. Have a good rest of the week.